The sound of my fork scraping against the ceramic plate was the only noise I could hear for a solid 10 seconds after my father spoke. It wasn't a loud scrape. It was just a tiny, high-pitched screech of metal on glaze. But in the silence of that dining room, it sounded like a scream. I can still feel the weight of the overhead light on my neck, and the way the spaghetti on my plate had suddenly turned into a pile of gray worms. I wasn't hungry anymore. My father cleared his throat. He used his lawyer voice. The one that made him feel important in court. The one that made me feel like an exhibit instead of a daughter. He said, "Eleanor, this situation with your brother has become untenable. Your mother and I have discussed it at length. Given the strain on the household and the potential for this incident to follow him into his professional life, we need a resolution tonight." I looked up from the gray worms. My mother was staring at the salt shaker, her lips pressed so thin they had practically disappeared into her face. She wouldn't look at me. She never looked at me when the hammer was coming down. Next to her, at the head of the table where he always sat like a prince surveying his kingdom, was Jacob, my older brother. The golden son. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, with this infuriating half-smirk on his face. He looked like a cat who had just watched the canary fly directly into his mouth. Jacob didn't have to say a word. He just had to exist, and the world bent around him. He was the one who got the new car for making the dean's list, even though I had made the president's list with a higher GPA while working a part-time job he wouldn't be caught dead doing. He was the one who got the apology when he broke my laptop because he was stressed about exams. And now this. I knew what incident my father was talking about. 3 days ago, Jacob had tried to take credit for a research grant proposal I had spent 6 months bleeding over. I was a research assistant. He was a visiting consultant because Dad pulled strings. When I confronted him in the university library, he had raised his voice and I had raised mine back. I didn't hit him. I didn't curse. I just said, loudly, that his entire career was built on our father's name and my late-night revisions. Someone recorded 12 seconds of it. 12 seconds where I looked like the hysterical sister attacking the promising young scholar. The video had gotten 300 views on the campus meme page before Jacob had it taken down. But the damage was done. His ego was bruised. And in our house, a bruised ego on the golden son was a national emergency. "You will apologize to Jacob," my father continued, dabbing the corner of his mouth with a cloth napkin. "A sincere, written apology acknowledging your overreaction and affirming his leadership on the project. You will copy the department head." My stomach dropped through the floorboards. "And if I don't?" I asked. My voice was smaller than I wanted it to be. It sounded like I was 7 years old again, asking why Jacob got the bigger slice of cake. My mother finally looked up from the salt shaker. Her eyes were tired, but they weren't sad for me. They were tired of me being the problem. "Then we simply cannot justify the expense of your final year," she said. "We've sacrificed so much for you both. If you're going to be this destructive to your brother's path, we have to protect the investment we've made in him." But what happened next changed everything inside me. It was the word investment. She didn't say son. She said investment. And she said destructive like I was a natural disaster, a hurricane that had wandered into their perfectly curated life. I looked at Jacob. He was swirling the ice in his glass, utterly bored by the discussion of my future demolition. He was already thinking about his weekend plans. I felt something snap. It wasn't a loud, dramatic crack like in the movies. It was a quiet, almost peaceful severing. It was the sound of a rope holding up a heavy chandelier finally giving way. You hear the ping of the last strand breaking, and then everything is just floating in the gravity of the fall. I set my fork down carefully. I wiped my mouth. I made sure there was no spaghetti sauce on my face because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me messy. "Fine," I said. My father blinked. "Fine? You'll write the apology." "No," I said, standing up. "I mean fine. Cut it off. Keep the money." The smirk on Jacob's face widened. He thought he had won. He thought I was just being dramatic and would come crawling back by midnight, begging for the tuition check. My mother let out a long, weary sigh, the kind you give a toddler who refuses to put on their shoes. "Eleanor, sit down," my father commanded. "Don't be ridiculous." Where will you go? How will you finish your degree? I didn't answer. I walked out of the dining room and up the stairs. I could hear my mother's voice, low and venomous. See? This is what I mean. This is the emotional instability we're dealing with. Emotional instability. They had pathologized my refusal to be a doormat. I went into my room and closed the door. And then I started to work. But I wasn't packing a suitcase with tears streaming down my face. I was packing with the cold precision of a surgeon. The truth was far worse than they imagined because I wasn't just taking my clothes. I opened my laptop and pulled up the encrypted folder I had kept for 2 years. Call it paranoia. Call it survival instinct. Growing up in a house where the narrative is always being rewritten against you teaches you to keep receipts. In that folder was everything. Screenshots of Jacob's emails where he asked me to polish his work, which was code for write it from scratch. Audio files on my phone of him admitting he lied about his volunteer hours for his fellowship application. And the crown jewel, a video I had taken 6 months ago of my father on the phone with a donor, explicitly offering a favorable legal review in exchange for a gift to Jacob's university fund. I never planned to use it. It was just insurance. It was the comfort of knowing that if the gaslighting ever got too thick, I had a match. I spent 4 hours packing my room. Not just clothes, but the room itself. I took the posters off the wall. I took the sheets off the bed. I removed the curtains. By 3 a.m., the room looked like a vacant cell. It was as if I had never existed there at all. The only thing left was my laptop on the bare desk, glowing in the dark. At 4:45 a.m., I hit compose. I addressed it to the University Ethics Board, the Dean of Students, and the local news tip line. The subject line read, regarding the integrity of the Whitmore family and Jacob Whitmore's academic standing. I attached the files. All of them. I was about to hit send when I heard a soft knock on my door. I froze, my finger hovering over the trackpad. The door creaked open. It was Jacob. He wasn't smirking now. His face was pale, and he was looking past me at the empty walls, the stripped bed, the hollow closet. Hey, he whispered, his voice shaky. Can we talk? I feel bad about dinner. I just stared at him. He saw the open email on the screen. He couldn't read the words from the door, but he saw the list of attachments. He saw the subject line. He saw the long list of recipients. His eyes went wide. He took a step forward. Ellie, tell me you didn't send that. Before I could answer, the floorboard in the hallway groaned. My father was standing right behind Jacob, still in his robe, holding a cup of coffee. He looked at Jacob's panicked face, then at my empty room, then at the glow of my laptop screen. My dad went quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a tornado touches down. Send what? He asked. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt on my lips in years. I guess you're about to find out, I said. And I clicked the trackpad. The swoosh sound of the email leaving the outbox was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. That moment still haunts me, but not for the reason you think. The sound of that swoosh was like a gunshot in a library. It was silent, but it was final. For a split second, nobody moved. The three of us were frozen in that doorway like a grotesque family portrait. My father still holding his coffee cup. Jacob's mouth hanging open. And me, standing in the middle of a room that no longer belonged to anyone. Then the silence shattered. Jacob lunged forward, but it was too late. The screen blinked with the confirmation message. Your message has been sent. He stopped at the edge of the desk, his hands gripping the wood so hard his knuckles turned white. He looked at me, and for the first time in my entire life, I saw something other than smug superiority in his eyes. I saw terror. Pure, unfiltered, career-ending terror. What did you do? He hissed. Ellie, what did you just do? My father stepped into the room. He set his coffee cup down on the bare dresser with a loud clink. The sound echoed off the empty walls. He walked over to the laptop and turned the screen toward himself. I watched his eyes scan the subject line. I watched him scroll down and see the list of recipients. His face didn't change expression at first. It was like watching a statue crack in slow motion. First a twitch in his left eye, then a flush creeping up from his collar. Then the corners of his mouth turned down so sharply it looked like his face was melting. Eleanor. His voice was barely a whisper. What is this attachment labeled Whitmore donor called June 14th? I picked up my backpack from the floor and slung it over one shoulder. You know exactly what it is, Dad. You were the one speaking on it. I never expected this betrayal to feel so liberating. My mother appeared in the hallway behind them. She was wrapped in her silk robe, her hair in curlers. She looked from Jacob's pale face to my father's trembling hands, and her motherly intuition told her something catastrophic had just occurred. What is going on? She demanded. Why does Eleanor's room look like a prison cell after an escape? Jacob turned to her, and his voice cracked in a way I had never heard before. She sent the files, Mom. She sent everything. The emails, the recordings, the donor call. She sent it to the ethics board. She sent it to the dean. She sent it to the news. The color drained from my mother's face. She stumbled forward and grabbed my father's arm. Richard, tell me she's lying. Tell me she didn't just destroy this family over a stupid argument about tuition. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound just came out of me, sharp and bitter. A stupid argument? You told me to kneel to him or lose everything I've worked for. You called me destructive while you were literally committing fraud to prop up his fake career. And now you're worried about the family being destroyed? The family was destroyed a long time ago. I just finally decided to stop pretending it wasn't. My father's lawyer brain finally kicked in. He straightened his robe and took a deep breath. Okay, we can manage this. Jacob, call the dean's office. Leave a voicemail saying there's been a family dispute and a fabricated email was sent from Eleanor's account. I'll call the ethics board and claim my account was hacked. We can get ahead of this. Eleanor, you will issue a retraction immediately, or I swear to God I will make sure you never set foot on a college campus again. He reached for the laptop to start the damage control process. But his hand stopped midair. Because that's when we all heard it. The faint, distant sound of a car pulling into the driveway. It was 5:15 in the morning. No one visited at 5:15 in the morning unless something was very wrong. We all turned toward the window. The sun was just starting to bleed gray light over the horizon. A white sedan with a university logo on the side door was parked behind my father's car. Two figures in dark suits were getting out. But what happened next changed everything. Jacob started hyperventilating. It's the dean's office security. They must have gotten the email alert immediately. Dad, do something. My father turned back to me, and for the first time in my life, I saw him without his armor. Without his courtroom confidence. Without the carefully constructed persona of Richard Whitmore, respected attorney and pillar of the community. He just looked like a scared old man in a bathrobe. Ellie, please, he whispered. Please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. We can fix this. We can fix everything. I'll pay for your education. I'll pay for your apartment. I'll make Jacob apologize publicly. Just tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you were angry and you fabricated the evidence. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had spent 21 years making me feel like I was invisible unless I was serving the needs of his golden child. I looked at the mother who had watched it happen and turned away because it was easier to pretend I was the problem. I looked at the brother who had stolen my work, my credit, my peace, and my future without a single moment of guilt. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not even satisfaction. Just a vast, hollow emptiness where a family used to be. That's the difference between us, Dad, I said quietly. I didn't fabricate anything. Every single file in that folder is real. And deep down, you know it. The doorbell rang. A long, insistent buzz that cut through the morning silence like a scalpel. My mother started crying. Not the dignified, controlled tears of a concerned parent. These were ugly, gasping sobs. She grabbed my arm. Eleanor, please. For me. If you ever loved me, please. Don't let them take your father away. Don't let them destroy your brother's future. We're your family. I gently removed her hand from my arm. No, I said. You were never my family. I was just the spare parts you used to keep the machine running. I walked past them. Past my father, who looked like he had aged 20 years in 5 minutes. Past Jacob, who was now sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. Past my mother, whose sobs followed me down the hallway like ghostly echoes. I opened the front door. Two men in university security uniforms stood on the porch. Behind them, I could see a third car pulling up. A news van. Someone had tipped them off. Maybe one of the recipients of the email had forwarded it immediately. The story was already bigger than any of us. The taller security officer spoke first. Miss Eleanor Whitmore? We received a serious allegation of academic fraud and potential legal misconduct involving university personnel and donors. We need to speak with you and your family immediately. I stepped aside and gestured toward the staircase. They're upstairs. Second door on the left. You'll find everything you need. I walked past them and down the front steps. The morning air was cold and sharp against my face. It smelled like wet grass and gasoline. It smelled like freedom. I heard my father's voice behind me, shouting my name. I heard my mother's wailing. I heard the heavy footsteps of the security officers climbing the stairs. I didn't look back. That moment still haunts me. Not because I regret what I did. I don't. Not for a single second. What haunts me is how easy it was. How natural it felt to burn down the entire structure of my life with one click. How quickly the people who claimed to love me turned into strangers when their secrets were exposed. I walked to the bus station and bought a ticket to a city 300 miles away. I had a friend there who had offered me a couch months ago when I first hinted that things at home were bad. I had $300 in my bank account and a backpack full of clothes. I had no degree, no family, and no plan. But I had something I had never had before. I had the truth. And I had myself. The last thing I saw as the bus pulled away from the station was a breaking news alert on the TV screen in the waiting area. The banner at the bottom read, "Prominent local attorney and son under investigation for academic fraud." I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the cold window. Some endings aren't endings at all. They're just the beginning of a different story. And I was finally ready to write my own. I still don't know if I did the right thing. And maybe that's the point.